The dragon drug had worn off. Its after effects are not pleasant, combining as they do physical fatigue with a certain starkness of thought, as if all color were drained from the mind. Now clad in a gray dressing gown, Demon lay on a gray couch in his third-floor study. His son stood at the window with his back to the silence. In a damask-padded room on the second floor, immediately below the study, waited Arder, who had arrived with Van a couple of minutes ago. In the skyscraper across the lane, a window was open exactly opposite the study, and an aproned man stood there setting up an easel and cocking his head in search of the right angle. The first thing Demon said was, "I insist that you face me when I'm speaking to you." Van realized that the fateful conversation must have already started in his father's brain, for the admonishment had the ring of a self-interruption, and with a slight bow he took a seat. However, before I advise you of those two facts, I would like to know how long this has been going on, one presumes, or something equally banal, but then all ends are banal. Hangings, the Nuremberg old maids, iron sting, shooting oneself, last words in the brand new Lador hospital, mistaking a drop of 30,000 feet for the airplane's washroom, being poisoned by one's wife, expecting a bit of Crimean hospitality, congratulating Mr. and Mrs. Vinelander. "It will be 9 years soon," replied Van. "I seduced her in the summer of 1884. Except for a single occasion, we did not make love again until the summer of 1888. After a long separation, we spent one winter together. All in all, I suppose, I have had her about 1,000 times. She is my whole life." Idiot. A longish pause, not unlike a fellow actor's dry-up, came in response to his well-rehearsed speech. Finally, Demon, "The second fact may horrify you even more than the first. I know it caused me much deeper worry. Moral, of course, not monetary, than Arder's case, of which eventually her mother informed Cousin Dan, so that, in a sense, paused with an underground trickle. Some other time I'll tell you about the Black Miller. Not now, too trivial. Dr. Lappener's wife, born Countess Alp, not only left him in 1871 to live with Norbert von Miller, amateur poet, Russian translator at the Italian consulate in Geneva, and professional smuggler of neonegrine, found only in the Valais, but had imparted to her lover the melodramatic details of the subterfuge which the kind-hearted physician had considered would prove a boon to one lady and a blessing to the other. Versatile Norbert spoke English with an extravagant accent, hugely admired wealthy people, and, when name-dropping, always qualified such a person as enormously rich, with odd, amorous gusto, throwing himself back in his chair and spreading tensely curved arms to unfold an invisible fortune. He had a round head as bare as a knee, a corpse's button nose, and very white, very limp, very damp hands, adorned with rutilant gems. His mistress soon left him. Dr. Lappener died in 1872, about the same time the Baron married an innkeeper's innocent daughter and began to blackmail Demon Veen. This went on for almost 20 years. When aging Miller was shot dead by an Italian policeman on a little-known border trail, which had seemed to get steeper and muddier every year. Out of sheer kindness or habit, Demon bade his lawyer continue to send Miller's widow, who mistook it naively for insurance money, the trimestral sum which had been swelling with each pregnancy of the robust Swisses. Demon used to say that he would publish one day, quote, Black Miller's, end of quote, quatrains, which adorned his letters with the jingle of verselets on calendarial leaves. Quote, my spouse is thicker, I am leaner. Again it comes, a new bambino. You must be good like I am good. Her stove is big and wants more wood. We may add, to complete this useful parenthesis, that in early February 1893, not long after the poet's death, two other less successful blackmailers were waiting in the wings. Kim, who would have bothered Arder again had he not been carried out of his cottage with one eye hanging on a red thread and the other drowned in its blood, and the son of one of the former employees of the famous clandestine message agency after it had been closed by the U.S. government in 1928, when the past had ceased to matter and nothing but the straw of a prison cell could reward the optimism of second-generation rogues. The most protracted of the several pauses having run its dark course, Demon's voice emerged to say with a vigor that it had lacked before, Van, you received the news I impart with incomprehensible calmness. I do not recall any instance in factual or fictional life of a father's having to tell his son that particular kind of thing in these particular circumstances. But you play with a pencil and seem as unruffled as if we were discussing your gaming debts or the demands of a wench knocked up in a ditch. Tell him about the herbarium in the attic, about the indiscretions of anonymous servants, about a forged wedding date, about everything that two bright children had so gaily gleaned. I will. He did. She was 12, Van added, and I was a male primatal of 14 and a half. And we just did not care, and it's too late to care now. Too late, shouted his father, sitting up on his couch. Please, Dad, do not lose your temper, said Van. Nature, as I informed you once, has been kind to me. We can afford to be careless in every sense of the word. I'm not concerned with semantics or semination. One thing, and only one, matters. It is not too late to stop that ignoble affair. No shouting and no Philistine epithets, interrupted Van. All right, said Demon, I take back the adjective and I ask you instead, is it too late to prevent your affair with your sister from wrecking her life? Van knew this was coming. He said this was coming. Ignoble had been taken care of. Would his accuser define wrecking? The conversation now took a neutral turn that was far more terrible than its introductory admission of faults for which our young lovers had long pardoned their parents. How did Van imagine his sisters pursuing a scenic career? Would he admit it would be wrecked if they persisted in their relationship? Did he envisage a life of concealment and luxurious exile? Was he ready to deprive her of normal interests in a normal marriage? Children, normal amusements. Don't forget normal adultery, remarked Van. How much better that would be, said grim Demon, sitting on the edge of the couch with both elbows propped on his knees and nursing his head in his hands. The awfulness of the situation is an abyss that grows deeper the more I think of it. You force me to bring up the tritest terms such as family, honor, set, law. All right, I have bribed many officials in my wild life, but neither you nor I can bribe a whole culture, a whole country. And the emotional impact of learning that for almost 10 years you and that charming child have been deceiving their parents. Here Van expected his father to take the it would kill your mother line. But Demon was wise enough to keep clear of it. Nothing could kill Marina. If any rumors of incest did come her way, concern with her inner peace would help her to ignore them, or at least romanticize them out of reality's reach. Both men knew all that. Her image appeared for a moment and accomplished a facile fade-out. Demon spoke on. I cannot disinherit you. Aqua left you enough ridge and real estate to annul the conventional punishment, and I cannot denounce you to the authorities without involving my daughter, whom I mean to protect at all cost. But I can do the next proper thing. I can curse you. I can make this our last. Van, whose finger had been gliding endlessly to and fro along the mute but soothingly smooth edge of the mahogany desk, now heard with horror the sob that shook Demon's entire frame, and then saw a deluge of tears flowing down those hollowed tan cheeks. In an amateur parody at Van's birthday party 15 years ago, his father had made himself up as Boris Godunov and shed strange, frightening jet-black tears before rolling down the steps of a burlesque throne in death's total surrender to gravity. Did those dark streaks in the present show come from his blackening his orbits, eyelashes, eyelids, eyebrows? The funest gamester, the pale, fatal girl in another well-known melodrama. In this one, Van gave him a clean handkerchief to replace the soiled rag. His own marble calm did not surprise Van. The ridicule of a good cry with father adequately clogged the usual ducts of emotion. Demon regained his composure, if not his young looks, and said, I believe in you and your common sense. You must not allow an old debaucher to disown an only son. If you love her, you wish her to be happy, and she will not be as happy as she could be once you gave her up. If you love her, you wish her to be happy, and she will not be as happy as she could be once you gave her up. You may go. Tell her to come here on your way down. Down. My first is a vehicle that twists dead daisies around its spokes. My second is old Manhattan slang for money. And my hole makes a hole. As he traversed the second-floor landing, he saw through the archway of 2 rooms Ardor in her black dress standing with her back to him at the oval window in the boudoir. He told a footman to convey her father's messages to her and passed almost at a run through the familiar echoes of the stone-flagged vestibule. My second is also the meeting place of 2 steep slopes. Right-hand lower drawer of my practically unused new desk, which is quite as big as Dad's, with Sig's compliments. He judged it would take him as much time to find a taxi at this hour of the day as to walk with his ordinary swift swing the 10 blocks to Alex Avenue. He was coatless, tieless, hatless. A strong, sharp wind dimmed his sight with salty frost and played Medusian havoc with his black locks. Upon letting himself in for the last time into his idiotically cheerful apartment, he forthwith sat down at that really magnificent desk and wrote the following note. Do what he tells you. His logic sounds preposterous, presupposing, sick, a vague kind of Victorian era as they have on Terra according to my mad, ? But in a paroxysm of illegible. I suddenly realized he was right. Yes, right, here and there, not neither here nor there as most things are. You see, girl, how it is and must be. In the last window we shared, we both saw a man painting. Us? But your second floor level of vision probably prevented your seeing that he wore what looked like a butcher's apron. Badly smeared. Goodbye, girl. Van sealed the letter, found his Thunderbolt pistol in the place he had visualized, introduced one cartridge into the magazine and translated it into its chamber. Then, standing before a closet mirror, he put the automatic to his head at the point of the Patirion and pressed the comfortably concave trigger. Nothing happened. Or perhaps everything happened and his destiny simply forked at that instant, as it probably does sometimes at night, especially in a strange bed, at stages of great happiness or great desolation, when we happen to die in our sleep, but continue our normal existence with no perceptible break in the faked serialization on the following neatly prepared morning with a spurious past discreetly but firmly attached behind. Anyway, what he held in his right hand was no longer a pistol, but a pocket comb which he passed through his hair at the temples. It was to gray by the time that Ardor, then in her 30s, said, when they spoke of their voluntary separation. I would have killed myself too had I found Rose wailing over your corpse. Seconds pensées sont les bons, as your other white bon used to say in her pretty patois. As to the apron, you were quite right, and what you did not make out was that the artist had about finished a large picture of your meek little palazzo, standing between its two giant guards. Perhaps for the cover of a magazine which rejected that picture. But you know, there's one thing I regret, she added. Your use of an alpenstock to release a brute's fury. Not yours, not my Van's. I should never have told you about the Lador policeman. You should never have taken him into your confidence, never connived with him to burn those files. And most of Kologano's pine forest. Eto una zetel no. It is humiliating. Amends have been made, replied Fat Van with a fat man's chuckle. I'm keeping Kim safe and snug in a nice home for disabled professional people, where he gets from me loads of nicely brailled books on new processes and chromophotography. There are other possible forkings and continuations that occur to the dream mind, but these will do. Part 3. He traveled, he studied, he taught. He contemplated the pyramids of Ladora, visited mainly because of its name. Under a full moon that silvered the sands inlaid with pointed black shadows, he went shooting with the British governor of Armenia and his niece on Lake Van. From a hotel balcony in Sidra, his attention was drawn by the manager to the wake of an orange sunset that turned the ripples of a lavender sea into goldfish scales and was well worth the price of enduring the quaintness of the small striped rooms he shared with his secretary, young Lady Scramble. On another terrace overlooking another fabled bay, Eberthella Brown, the local Shah's pet dancer, a naive little thing who thought baptism of desire meant something sexual, spilled her morning coffee upon noticing a 6-inch long caterpillar with foxfurred segments. Key Rempe was tramping along the balustrade and curled up in a swoon when picked up by Van, who for hours after removing the beautiful animal to a bush, kept gloomily plucking itchy bright hairs out of his fingertips with the girl's tweezers. He learned to appreciate the singular little thrill of following dark byways and strange towns, knowing well that he would discover nothing save filth and ennui and discarded Americans with Billy labels, and the jungle jingles of exported jazz coming from syphilitic cafes. He often felt that the famed cities, the museums, the ancient torture house, and the suspended garden were but places on the map of his own madness. He liked composing his works, illegible signatures, 1895, clairvoyeurism, 1903, furnished space, 1913, the texture of time, begun 1922, in mountain refuges and in the drawing rooms of great expresses and on the sun decks of white ships and on the stone tables of Latin public parks. He would uncurl out of an indefinitely lengthy trance and note with wonder that the ship was going the other way, or that the order of his left-hand fingers was reversed, now beginning clockwise with his thumb as on his right hand, or that the marble Mercury that had been looking over his shoulder had been transformed into an attentive arbor vitae, or that the marble Mercury that had been looking over his shoulder had been transformed into an attentive arbor vitae. He would realize all at once that 3, 7, 13 years in one cycle of separation, and then 4, 8, 16, and yet another, had elapsed since he had last embraced, held, bewept ardor. Numbers and rows and series, the nightmare and malediction, harrowing pure thought and pure time, seemed bent on mechanizing his mind. 3 elements, fire, water, and air, destroyed in that sequence Marina, Lucette, and Demon. Terra waited. For 7 years after she had dismissed her life with her husband, a successfully achieved corpse as irrelevant and retired to her still dazzlingly, still magically well-staffed Côte d'Azur villa, the one Demon had once given her, Van's mother had been suffering from various obscure illnesses, which everybody thought she made up or talentedly simulated, and which she contended could be, and partly were, cured by willpower. Van visited her less often than dutiful Lucette, whom he glimpsed there on 2 or 3 occasions, and once in 1899 he saw as he entered the arbutus and laurel garden of Villa Armina, a bearded old priest of the Greek persuasion, clad in neutral black, leaving on a motor bicycle for his niece parish near the tennis courts. Marina spoke to Van about religion and Terra and the theater, but never about ardor, and just as he did not suspect she knew everything about the horror and ardor of artists, none suspected what pain in her bleeding bowels she was trying to allay by incantations and, quote, self-focusing, end of quote, or its opposite device, quote, self-dissolving, end of quote. She confessed with an enigmatic and rather smug smile that much as she liked the rhythmic blue puffs of incense, and the diacon's rich growl on the ambon, and the oily brown icon coped in protective filigree to receive the worshipper's kiss, her soul remained irrevocably consecrated, Naparacor, in spite of, Dasha Vinelander, to the ultimate wisdom of Hinduism. Early in 1900, a few days before he saw Marina for the last time at the clinic in Nice, where he learned for the first time the name of her illness, Van had a verbal nightmare caused maybe by the musky smell in the Miramas, Bouches Rouges du Rhône, Villa Venus. 2 formless, fat, transparent creatures were engaged in some discussion, one repeating, "I can't," meaning can't die, a difficult procedure to carry out voluntarily, without the help of the dagger, the ball, or the bowl, and the other affirming, "You can, sir." She died a fortnight later, and her body was burnt according to her instructions. Van, a lucid soul, considered himself less brave morally than physically. He was always, meaning well into the 1960s, to recollect with reluctance, as if wishing to suppress in his mind a petty, timorous, and stupid deed, for actually, who knows, the later antlers might have been set right then, with green lamps greening green growths before the hotel where the Vinelanders stayed. His reacting from Kingston to Lucette's cable from Nice. "Mother died this morning. The funeral -- cremation -- is to be held after tomorrow at sundown," with the request to advise him, "Please advise." Who else would be there? And upon getting her prompt reply that Demon had already arrived with Andre and Ardor, his cabling back, "Désolé de ne pouvoir être avec vous." He had roamed in Kingston's Cascadilla Park in the active, sweet, swarming spring dusk, so much more seraphic than that flurry of cables. The last time he had seen mummy-wizened Marina and told her he must return to America, though actually there was no hurry, only the smell in her hospital room that no breeze could dislodge. She had asked with her new tender myopic because inward expression, "Can't you wait till I'm gone?" And his reply had been, "I'll be back on the 25th. I have to deliver an address on the psychology of suicide." And she had said, stressing, now that everything was Tripitaka, safely packed, the exact kinship, quote, "Do tell them about your silly Aunt Aqua," whereupon he had nodded with a smirk instead of answering, "Yes, mother." Hunched up in a last band of low sun on the bench where he had recently fondled and fouled a favorite lanky, awkward black girl student, Van tortured himself with thoughts of insufficient filial affection, a long story of unconcern, amused scorn, physical repulsion, and habitual dismissal. He looked around, making wild amends, willing her spirit to give him an unequivocal and indeed all-deciding sign of continued being behind the veil of time, beyond the flesh of space, but no response came. Not a petal fell on his bench. Not a gnat touched his hand. He wondered what really kept him alive on terrible Anti-Terra. With Terra a myth and all art a game, when nothing mattered anymore since the day he slapped Valerio's warm, bristly cheek. And whence, from what deep well of hope, did he still scoop up a shivering star, when everything had an edge of agony and despair, when another man was in every bedroom with ardor? On a bleak morning between the spring and summer of 1901 in Paris, as Van, black-hatted, one hand playing with a warm loose change in his topcoat pocket in the other, fawn-gloved, up-swinging a furled English umbrella, strode past a particularly unattractive sidewalk cafe, among the many lining the avenue Guillaume Pitt, a chubby bald man in a rumpled brown suit with a watch-chained waistcoat stood up and hailed him. Van considered for a moment those red round cheeks, that black goatee. "Ne Uzneosh, you don't recognize me?" Grigory Akimovich," cried Van, tearing off his glove. "I grew a regular Volhart last summer." "You'd never have known me then. Beer? Wonder what you do to look so boyish. Wonder what you do to look so boyish, Van. Diet of champagne, not beer," said Professor Bean, putting on his spectacles and signaling to a waiter with the crook of his umber. "Hardly stops one adding weight, but keeps the scrotum crisp." "I'm also very fat, yes?" "What about Grace? I can't imagine her getting fat." "Once twins, always twins. My wife is pretty portly, too." "Tactigenot? So you are married?" "Didn't know it. How long?" "About 2 years." "To whom?" "Maud Sween." "The daughter of the poet?" No, her mother is a Brugum." Might have replied Arterveen had Mr. Vinelander not been a quicker suitor. "I think I met a Broom somewhere." Dropped the subject, probably a dreary union. Hefty, high-handed wife, he more of a bore than ever. "I last saw you 13 years ago riding a black pony. No, a black silentium. Bojimoy? Yes, Bojimoy. You can well say that, those lovely, lovely agonies and lovely artists. Oh, I was absolutno, bezumno, madly in love with your cousin." "You mean Miss Veen? I did not know it. How long?" "Neither did she. I was terribly..." "How long are you staying?" "Terribly shy, because of course I realized that I could not compete with her numerous boyfriends." "Numerous? 2? 3? Is it possible he never heard about the main one? All those rose hedges knew, all the maids knew, in all 3 manners, the noble reticence of our bedmakers." "How long will you be staying in Lute?" "No, Greg, I ordered it. You pay for the next bottle." "Tell me..." So odd to recall. It was frenzy, it was fantasy, it was reality in the X degree. I'd have consented to be beheaded by a Tartar, I declare. If in exchange I could have kissed her instep. You were a cousin, almost a brother. You can't understand that obsession. All those picnics. And Percy de Prey, who boasted to me about her and drove me crazy with envy and pity, and Dr. Krolik, who they said also loved her, and Phil Rack, a composer of genius. Dead, all dead. I really know very little about music, but it was a great pleasure to make your chum howl. I have an appointment in a few minutes, alas. Za Tvoyo Sidorovi Grigory Akimovich. Arkadievich, said Greg, who had let it pass once, but now mechanically corrected Van. Ach, yes! Stupid slip of the slovenly tongue. How is Arkady Grigorievich? He died. He died just before your aunt. I thought the papers paid a very handsome tribute to her talent. And where is Adelaida Danilovna? Did she marry Christopher Vinelander or his brother? In California or Arizona. Andre's the name, I gather. Perhaps I'm mistaken. In fact, I never knew my cousin very well. I visited artists only twice after all, for a few weeks each time. Years ago. Somebody told me she's a movie actress. I have no idea. I've never seen her on the screen. Oh, that would be terrible, I declare, to switch on the Doro telly and suddenly see her, like a drowning man seeing his whole past in the trees and the flowers and the wreathed dachshund. She must have been terribly affected by her mother's terrible death. Likes the word terrible, I declare. The terrible suit of clothes, a terrible tumor. Why must I stand it? Revolting and yet fascinating in a weird way. My babbling shadow, my burlesque double. Van was about to leave when a smartly uniformed chauffeur came up to inform my lord that his lady was parked at the corner of Rue Saigon and was summoning him to appear. Aha, said Van. I see you are using your British title. Your father preferred to pass for a Chekhovian colonel. Maud is Anglo-Scottish and, well, likes it that way. Thinks the title gets one better service abroad. By the way, somebody told me, yes, Tobak, that Lucette is at the Alphonse IV? I haven't asked about your father. He's in good health? Van bowed. And how is the Governantka Bellatriska? Her last novel is called La Amie Luc. She just got the Le Bon Academy Prize for her copious rubbish. They parted laughing. A moment later, as happens so often in farces in foreign cities, Van ran into another friend. With a surge of delight, he saw Cordula in a tight scarlet skirt, bending with baby words of comfort over two unhappy poodles attached to the waiting post of a sausage shop. Van stroked her with his fingertips, and as she straightened up indignantly and turned around, indignation instantly replaced by gay recognition. He quoted the stale but appropriate lines he had known since the days his schoolmates annoyed him with them. The Veens speak only to Tobaks, but Tobaks speak only to dogs. The passage of years had but polished her prettiness, and though many fashions had come and gone since 1889, he happened upon her at a season when hairdos and skirt lines had reverted briefly. Another much more elegant lady was already ahead of her, to the style of a dozen years ago, abolishing the interruption of remembered approval and pleasure. She plunged into a torrent of polite questions, but he had a more important matter to settle at once. While the flame still flickered. Let's not squander, he said, the tumescence of retrieved time on the gush of small talk. I'm bursting with energy, if that's what you want to know. Now look, it may sound silly and insolent, but I have an urgent request. Will you cooperate with me in cornuting your husband? It's a must. Really, Van, exclaimed angry Cordelia. You go a bit far. I'm a happy wife. My Tobachok adores me. We'd have 10 children by now if I'd not been careful with him and others. You'll be glad to learn that this other has been found utterly sterile. Well, I'm anything but. I guess I'd cause a mule to foal by just looking on. Moreover, I'm lunching today with the Goals. C'est bizarre, an exciting little girl like you who can be so tender with poodles, yet turns down a poor, paunchy, stiff old Veen. The Veens are much too gay as dogs go. Since you collect adages, persisted Van, let me quote an Arabian one. Paradise is only one asba south of a pretty girl's sash. Eh bien? You are impossible. Where and when? Where? In that drab little hotel across the street. When? Right now. Never seen you on a hobby horse yet, because that's what tout comfort promises, and not much else. I must be home not later than 11:30. It's almost 11 now. It will take 5 minutes, please. Astraddle, she resembled a child braving her first merry-go-round. She made a rectangular moue as she used that vulgar contraption. Sad, sullen streetwalkers do it with expressionless faces, lips tightly closed. She rode it twice. Their brisk nub and its repetition lasted 15 minutes in all, not 5. Very pleased with himself, Van walked with her for a stretch through the brown and green Bois de Bellu, in the direction of her Ozobinyonchiok small mansion. That reminds me, he said, I no longer use our Alexis apartment. I've had some poor people live there these last 7 or 8 years. The family of a police officer who used to be a footman at Uncle Dan's place in the country. My policeman is dead now, and his widow and 3 boys have gone back to Lador. I want to relinquish that flat. Would you like to accept it as a belated wedding present from an admirer? Good. We shall do it again someday. Tomorrow, I have to be in London, and on the 3rd, my favorite liner, Admiral Tobakov, will take me to Manhattan. Au revoir. Tell him to look out for low lintels. Antlers can be very sensitive when new. Greg Ermanin tells me that Lucette is at the Alphonse 4. That's right, and where's the other? I think we'll part here. It's 20 minutes to 12. You better toddle along. Au revoir. You're a very bad boy and I'm a very bad girl, but it was fun, even though you've been speaking to me not as you would to a lady friend, but as you probably do to little whores. Wait! Here's a top secret address where you can always, fumbling in her handbag, reach me, finding a card with her husband's crest and scribbling a postal cryptograph, at Malbrook, Maine, where I spend every August. She looked around, rose on her toes like a ballerina, and kissed him on the mouth. Sweet Cordula.